Overview. Visual Basic.NET VB.NET is an object-oriented computer programming language implemented on the .NET framework. Although it is an evolution of classic Visual Basic language, it is not backwards compatible with VB6, and any code written in the old version does not compile under VB.NET. Like all other .NET languages, VB.NET has complete support for object-oriented concepts. Everything in a VB.NET is an object, including all of the primitive types: short, integer, long, string, boolean, etc., and user-defined types, events, and even assemblies. All objects inherit from the base class object. These are the following reasons that make VB.NET a widely used professional language: modern, general purpose, object-oriented, component-oriented, easy to learn, structured language. It produces efficient programs. It can be compiled on a variety of computer platforms. Part of .NET framework. Boolean conditions. Automatic garbage collection. Standard library. Assembly versioning. Properties and events. Delegates and events management. Easy to use generics. Indexes. Conditional compilation. Simple multithreading. VB.NET has numerous strong programming features that make it enduring to a multitude of programmers worldwide. It has strong programming features in VB.NET. Integrated Development Environment (IDE). The Visual Studio product family shares a single integrated development environment (IDE) that is composed of several elements: the menu bar, standard toolbar, various tool windows docked or auto-hidden on the left, bottom, and right sides, as well as the editor space. The tool windows, menus, and toolbars available depend on the type of project or file you are working in. Integrated Development Environment allows the automation of many of the common programming tasks in one environment. Writing the code, checking for syntax, language errors, compiling and interpreting, transferring to computer language, debugging, fixing time or logic errors, running the application. Microsoft provides the following development tools for VB.NET programming: Visual Studio 2010 VS, Visual Basic 2010 Express VBE, Visual Web Developer. Program structure. A VB.NET program basically consists of the following parts: namespace declaration, a class or module, one or more procedures, variables, the main procedure, statements and expressions, comments. Let us look at a simple code that would print the words "Hello World." When the code is compiled and executed, it produces the following result: Hello World. Program structure. VB.NET code can be structured as a module definition, form definition, or class definition. Module definition begins with module and ends with end module. Form definition is used to create a GUI. Class definition is written to represent an object. Classes or modules generally would contain more than one procedure. Procedures contain the executable code, or in other words, they define the behavior of the class. A procedure could be any of the following: function, sub, operator, get, set, add handler, remove handler, raise event. Writing a VB.NET module definition. A VB.NET code is not case-sensitive. VB.NET compiler does not require indentation of code, but good programming practice encourages indentation. The VB.NET statements consist of keywords and identifiers. Keywords have specific meanings to VB.NET. VB.NET identifiers are the names assigned by the programmer to modules, procedures, and variables, etc. VB.NET identifiers can be of any alphabet length, can include any letter or number but no spaces, must begin with a letter. Comment lines add explanations to code, are ignored by a compiler, begin with a single quote. Many statements invoke a method to do some work. Information sent to a method is called an argument. A literal is a value defined within a statement. Compile and execute VB.NET program. These are the steps to compile and execute a simple VB.NET program. Start Visual Studio. On the menu bar, choose File, New, Project. Choose Visual Basic from Templates. Choose Console Application. Specify a name and location for your project using the Browse button and then choose the OK button. The new project appears in Solution Explorer. Write code in the code editor. Click the Run button or the F5 key to run the project. A command prompt window appears that contains the line Hello World. Learning objectives. In this chapter, the user would be learning about Introduction to Programming with Visual Basic.NET and the following in detail. Basic concepts and a simple application, using variables, constants, functions, processing decisions, looping structures and lists. VB.NET Basic Syntax. VB.NET is an object-oriented programming language. In object-oriented programming methodology, a program consists of various objects that interact with each other by means of actions. The actions that an object may take are called methods. Objects of the same kind are said to have the same type, or more often are said to be in the same class. Objects have states and behaviors. For example, a dog has states, color, name, breed, as well as behavior, wagging, barking, eating, etc. An object is an instance of a class. Class. A class can be defined as a template or blueprint that describes the behavior and states that object of its type support. Methods. A method is basically a behavior. A class can contain many methods. It is in methods where the logics are written, data is manipulated, and all the actions are executed. Instant variables. Each object has its unique set of instant variables. An object state is created by the values assigned to these instant variables. VB.NET Basic Syntax. Member variables. Variables are attributes or data members of a class used for storing data. In the preceding program, the rectangle class has two member variables named length and width. Member functions. Functions are set of the statements that perform a specific task. The member functions of a class are declared within the class. Our sample class rectangle contains three member functions: accept details, get area, and display. Instantiating a class. In the preceding program, the class ExecutRectangle is used as a class, which contains a main method and instantiates a rectangle class. Identifiers. An identifier is a name used to identify a class, variable, function, or any other user-defined item. The basic rules for naming classes in VB.NET are as follows. A name must begin with a letter that could be followed by a sequence of letters, digits 0 to 9, or underscore. The first character in an identifier cannot be a digit. It must not contain any embedded space or symbol like question, minus, plus, exclamation, at. However, an underscore can be used. It should not be a reserved keyword. Data types. Data types refer to an extensive system used for declaring variables or functions of different types. The type of variable determines how much space it occupies in storage and how the bit pattern stored is interpreted. VB.NET provides a wide range of data types. Variables. A variable is nothing but the name given to a storage area that our programs can manipulate. Each variable in VB.NET has a specific type, which determines the size and layout of the variable's memory, the range of values that can be stored within that memory, and the set of operations that can be applied to the variable. The basic value types provided in VB.NET can be categorized as. VB.NET also allows defining other value types of variables like enum and reference types of variables like class. Variable declaration in VB.NET. DIM statement. The DIM statement is used for variable declaration and storage allocation for one or more variables. The DIM statement is used at module, class, structure, procedure, or block level. Syntax for variable declaration in VB.NET is: attribute list is a list of attributes that apply to the variable, optional. Access modifier defines the access levels of the variables. It has values as public, protected, friend, and private, optional. Shared declares a shared variable which is not associated with any specific instance of a class or structure, rather available to all the instances of the class or structure, optional. Shadows indicate that the variable redeclares and hides an identically named element or a set of overloaded elements in a base class, optional. Static indicates that the variable will retain its value even after termination of the procedure in which it is declared, optional. Read-only means a variable can be read but not written, optional. With events specifies that the variable is used to respond to events raised by the instance assigned to the variable, optional. Variable list provides a list of variables declared. Variable initialization in VB.NET. Variables are initialized, assigned a value with an equal sign followed by a constant expression. The general form of initialization is variable underscore name equals value. For example, you can initialize a variable at the time of declaration as follows. Accepting values from user. The console class in the system namespace provides a function readline for accepting input from the user and to store it into a variable. The following example demonstrates it. When the above code is compiled and executed, it produces the following result. Assume the user inputs "Hello World." Constants. The constants refer to fixed values that the program may not alter during its execution. These fixed values are also called literals. Constants can be of any of the basic data types like an integer constant, a floating constant, a character constant, or a string literal. There are also enumeration constants as well. The constants are treated just like regular variables except that the values cannot be modified after the definition. The syntax for the constant statement is: in VB.NET, constants are declared using the const statement. The const statement is used at module, class, structure, procedure, or block level for use in place of literal values. Constants. Attribute list specifies a list of attributes applied to the constants. You can provide multiple attributes separated by commas, optional. Access modifier specifies which code can access these constants, optional. Values can be either of the public, protected friend, or private. Shadows. This makes the constant hide a programming element of identical name in a base class, optional. Constant list gives a list of names of constants declared, required, where each constant name has the following syntax and paths. Constant name specifies the name of the constant. Data type specifies the data type of the constant. Initializer specifies the value assigned to the constant. Enumerations. An enumeration is a set of named integer constants. An enumerator type is declared using the enum statement. The enum statement declares an enumeration and defines the value of its members. The enum statement can be used at the module, class, structure, procedure, or block level. Enumerations. The syntax for the enum statement is as follows. Attribute list refers to the list of attributes applied to the variable, optional. Access modifier specifies which code can access these enumerations, optional. Values can be any of the following either singly or in combinations: public, protected, friend, or private. Shadows. This makes the enumeration hide a programming element of identical name in a base class, optional. Enumeration name. Name of the enumeration required. Data type specifies the data type of the enumeration and all its members. Member list specifies the list of member constants being declared in this statement, required. Where. Name specifies the name of the member, required. Initializer, value assigned to the enumeration member, optional. Functions. The function statement is used to declare the name, parameter, and the body of a function. The syntax for the function statement is: modifiers specify the access level of the function. Possible values are public, private, protected, friend, protected friend, and information regarding overloading, overriding, sharing, and shadowing. Function name indicates the name of the function. Parameter list specifies the list of parameters. Return type specifies the data type of the variable the function returns. Function returning a value. In VB.NET, a function can return a value to the calling code in two ways: by using the return statement, by assigning the value to the function name. The following example demonstrates using the findMax function. When the code is compiled and executed, it produces the following result. Recursive function. When the code is compiled and executed, it produces the following result. A function can call itself. This is known as recursion. Following is an example that calculates factorial for a given number using a recursive function. The following example demonstrates using the recursive function. Param arrays. At times, while declaring a function or subprocedure, you're not sure of the number of arguments passed as parameter. VB.NET param arrays or parameter arrays come in to help at these times. The following example demonstrates using the param arrays. When the code is compiled and executed, it produces the following result. Passing arrays as function arguments. You can pass an array as function argument in VB.NET. The following example demonstrates passing arrays as function arguments. When the code is compiled and executed, it produces the following result. Statements. A statement is a complete instruction in Visual Basic programs. It may contain keywords, operators, variables, literal values, constants, and expressions. Statements could be categorized as declaration statements, executable statements. Declaration statements. These are the statements where you name a variable, constant, or procedure and can also specify a data type. The declaration statements are used to name and define procedures, variables, properties, arrays, and constants. When you declare a programming element, you can also define its data type, access level, and scope. The programming elements you may declare include variables, constants, enumerations, classes, structures, modules, interfaces, procedures, procedure parameters, function returns, external procedure references, operators, properties, events, and delegates. Executable statements. These are the statements which initiate actions. These statements can call a method or function, loop or branch through blocks of code or assign values or expression to a variable or constant. In the last case, it is called an assignment statement. Statements and description. DIM statement declares and allocates storage space for one or more variables. Example. Const statement declares and defines one or more constants. Example: Enum statement declares an enumeration and defines the value of its members. Example: Statements and description. Class statement declares the name of a class and introduces the definition of the variable, properties, events, and procedures that the class comprises. Example: Structure statement declares the name of a structure and introduces the definition of variables, properties, events, and procedures that the structure comprises. Example: Module statement declares the name of a module and introduces the definition of the variables, properties, events, and procedures that the module comprises. Example: Statements and description. Interface statement declares the name of an interface and introduces the definition of the members that the interface comprises. Function statement declares the name, parameters, and code that define a function procedure. Substatement declares the name, parameters, and code that define a subprocedure. Statements and description. Declare statement declares a reference to a procedure implemented in an external file. Example: Operator statement declares the operator symbol, operands, and code that define an operator procedure on a class or structure. Example: Statements and description. Property statement declares the name of a property and the property procedures used to store and retrieve the value of the property. Example: Event statement declares the user-defined event. Example: Delegate statement used to declare a delegate. Example: Executable statements. An executable statement performs an action. Statements calling a procedure, branching to another place in the code, looping through several statements, or evaluating an expression are executable statements. An assignment statement is a special case of an executable statement. The following example demonstrates executable statement. When the code is compiled and executed, it produces the following result. Directives. The VB.NET compiler directives give instructions to the compiler to pre-process the information before actual compilation starts. All these directives begin with hash, and only white space characters may appear before a directive on a line. These directives are not statements. VB.NET compiler does not have a separate preprocessor. However, the directives are processed as if there was one. In VB.NET, the compiler directives are used to help in conditional compilation. Unlike C and C++ directives, they are not used to create macros. Compiler directives in VB.NET. VB.NET provides the following set of compiler directives: the hash const directive, the hash external source directive, the hash if then hash else directives, the hash region directive. Hash const directives. This directive defines conditional compiler constants. Syntax for this directive is: where const name specifies the name of the constant required. Expression. It is either a literal or other conditional compiler constant, or a combination including any or all arithmetic or logical operators except is. For example, when the code is compiled and executed, it produces the following result. Hash external source directives. This directive is used for indicating a mapping between specific lines of source code and text external to the source. It is used only by the compiler, and the debugger has no effect on code compilation. This directive allows including external code from an external code file into a source code file. The syntax for this directive is: the parameters of hash external source directive are the path of an external file, line number of the first line, and the line where the error occurred. The following code demonstrates a hypothetical use of the directive. When the code is compiled and executed, it produces the following result. the #if, then #else directives. This directive conditionally compiles selected blocks of Visual Basic code. The syntax for this directive is: the following code demonstrates a hypothetical use of the directive. When the code is compiled and executed, it produces the following result. The #region directives. This directive helps in collapsing and hiding sections of code in Visual Basic files. Syntax for this directive is #region identifier _string #endRegion. For example, decision-making. Decisions. Decision-making structures require that the programmer specify one or more conditions to be evaluated or tested by the program, along with a statement or statements to be executed if the condition is determined to be true, and optionally, other statements to be executed if the condition is determined to be false. VB.NET provides the following types of decision-making statements: if, then statement, if, then, else statement, nested if statements, select case statements, nested select case statements, if, then statement. An if-then statement consists of a Boolean expression followed by one or more statements. It is the simplest form of control statement, frequently used in decision-making and changing the control flow of the program execution. If condition, then statements, singular or plural, end if, where condition is a Boolean or relational condition, and statement is a simple or compound statement. If the condition evaluates to true, then the block of code inside the if statement will be executed. If the condition evaluates to false, then the first set of code after the end of the if statement, after the closing end if, will be executed. If, then, else statement. An if-then statement can be followed by an optional else statement, which executes when the Boolean expression is false. The syntax of an if, then, else statement in VB.NET is as follows. Nested if statements. You can use one if or else if statement inside another if or else if statement or statements. It is always legal in VB.NET to nest if, then, else statements, which means you can use one if or else if statement inside another if, else, if statements. The syntax for a nested if statement is as follows. Select case statement. A select case statement allows a variable to be tested for equality against a list of values. Each value is called a case, and the variable being switched on is checked for each select case. The syntax for a select case statement in VB.NET is as follows. Nested select case statements. You can use one select case statement inside another select case statements. It is possible to have select case statement as part of the statement sequence of an outer select statement. Even if the case constants of the inner and outer select contain common values, no conflicts will arise. Loops. There may be a situation when you need to execute a block of code several number of times. In general, statements are executed sequentially. The first statement in a function is executed first, followed by the second, and so on. Programming language provides various control structures that allow for more complicated execution paths. A loop statement allows us to execute a statement or group of statements multiple times. The following is the general form of a loop statement in most of the programming languages. VB.NET provides following types of loops to handle looping requirements. Do loop, for next, for each next, while, end while, with, end with, nested loops. Loop type, do loop. It repeats the enclosed block of statements while a Boolean condition is true or until the condition becomes true. It could be terminated at any time with the exit do statement. The syntax for this loop construct is for next. It repeats a group of statements a specified number of times, and the loop index counts the number of loop iterations as the loop executes. The syntax for this loop construct is for each next. It repeats a group of statements for each element in a collection. This loop is used for accessing and manipulating all elements in an array or a VB.NET collection. The syntax for this loop construct is while and while. It executes a series of statements as long as the given condition is true. The syntax for this loop construct is here, statements may be a single statement or a block of statements. The condition may be any expression and true is logical true. The loop iterates while the condition is true. With, end with. The syntax for this loop construct is it's not exactly a looping construct. It executes a series of statements that repeatedly refers to a single object or structure. Nested loops. You can use one or more loops inside any other while, for, or do loop. Nested for loop, nested while loop, nested do while loop. Loop control statements. Exit statement, continue statement, go to statement. Loop control statements change execution from its normal sequence. When execution leaves a scope, all automatic objects that were created in that scope are destroyed. VB.NET provides the following control statements. Exit statement. The exit statement transfers a control from a procedure or block immediately to the statement following the procedure call or the block definition. It terminates the loop, procedure, try block, or the select block from where it is called. If you're using nested loops, that is one loop inside another loop, the exit statement will stop the execution of the innermost loop and start executing the next line of code after the block. The syntax for the exit statement is terminates the loop or select case statement and transfers execution to the statement immediately following the loop or select case. Continue statement. The continue statement causes the loop to skip the remainder of its body and immediately retest its condition prior to reiterating. It works somewhat like the exit statement. Instead of forcing termination, it forces the next iteration of the loop to take place, skipping any code in between. For the for next loop, continue statement causes the conditional test and increment portions of the loop to execute. For the while and do while loops, continue statement causes the program control to pass to the conditional tests. The syntax for continue statement is as follows. Causes the loop to skip the remainder of its body and immediately retest its condition prior to reiterating. Go to statement. The go to statement transfers control unconditionally to a specified line in a procedure. The syntax for the go to statement is it is not advised to use go to statement in your program. Strings. Creating a string object. In VB.NET, you can use strings as array of characters. However, more common practice is to use a string keyword to declare a string variable. The string keyword is an alias for the system.string class. You can create string object using one of the following methods. By assigning a string literal to a string variable, by using a string class constructor, by using the string concatenation operator plus symbol, by retrieving a property or calling a method that returns a string, by calling or formatting a method to convert a value or object to its string representation. Properties of the string class. The string class has the following two properties. Chars gets the char object at a specified position in the current string object. Length gets the number of characters in the current string object. Methods of the string class. The string class has numerous methods that help you in working with the string objects. Method named and description. Public shared function compare. Open bracket str a as string, comma strb as string, close bracket, as integer. Compares two specified string objects and returns an integer that indicates the relative position in the sort order. Public shared function compare. Open bracket str a as string, comma strb as string, comma ignore case as boolean, close bracket, as integer. Compares two specified string objects and returns an integer that indicates the relative position in the sort order. However, it ignores case if the boolean parameter is true. Public shared function concat. Open bracket str0 as string, comma str1 as string, close bracket, as string, concatenates two string objects. Public shared function concat. Open bracket str0 as string, comma str1 as string, comma str2 as string, close bracket, as string, concatenates three string objects. Public shared function concat. Open bracket str0 as string, comma str1 as string, comma str2 as string, comma str3 as string, close bracket, as string, concatenates four string objects. Public function contains, open bracket, value as string, close bracket, as boolean. Returns a value indicating whether the specified string object occurs within the string. Public shared function copy. Open bracket str as string, close bracket, as string, creates a new string object with the same value as a specified string. Public sub copy to, open bracket, source index as integer, comma destination as char, open close bracket, destination index as integer, comma count as integer, close bracket. Copies a specified number of characters from a specified position of the string object to a specified position in an array of Unicode characters. Public function ends with, open bracket, value as string, close bracket, as boolean, determines whether the end of the string object matches the specified string. Public function equals, open bracket, value as string, close bracket, as boolean, determines whether the current string object and the specified string object have the same value. Public shared function equals, open bracket, a as string, comma b as string, close brackets, as boolean, determines whether two specified string objects have the same value. Public shared function format, open bracket, format as string, comma arg0 as object, close bracket, as string, replaces one or more format items in a specified string with the string representation of a specified object. Public function index of, open bracket, value as char, close brackets, as integer, returns the zero-based index of the first occurrence of the specified Unicode character in the current string. Public function index of, open bracket, value as string, close bracket, as integer, returns the zero-based index of the first occurrence of the specified string in this instance. Public function index of, open bracket, value as char, comma start index as integer, close brackets, as integer, returns the zero-based index of the first occurrence of the specified Unicode character in this string, starting search at the specified character position. Public function index of, open bracket, value as string, comma start index as integer, close bracket, as integer, returns the zero-based index of the first occurrence of the specified string in this instance, starting search at the specified character position. Public function index of any, open bracket, any of as char, open close bracket, as integer, returns the zero-based index of the first occurrence in this instance of any character in a specified array of Unicode characters. Public function index of any, open bracket, any of as char, open close brackets, comma start index as integer, close brackets, as integer, returns the zero-based index of the first occurrence in this instance of any character in a specified array of Unicode characters, starting search at the specified character position. Public function insert, open bracket, start index as integer, comma value as string, close bracket, as string. Returns a new string in which a specified string is inserted at a specified index position in the current string object. Public shared function is null or empty, open bracket, value as string, close bracket, as boolean. Indicates whether the specified string is null or an empty string. Public shared function join, open bracket, separator as string, comma, param array value as string, open close brackets, as string. Concatenates all the elements of a string array using the specified separator between each element. Public shared function join, open bracket, separator as string, comma, value as string, open close bracket, start index as integer, comma, count as integer, close brackets, as string. Concatenates specified elements of a string array using the specified separator between each element. Public function last index of, open bracket, value as char, close brackets, as integer. Returns the zero-based index position of the last occurrence of the specified Unicode character within the current string object. Public function last index of, open bracket, value of string, close bracket, as integer. Returns the zero-based index position of the last occurrence of the specified string within the current string object. Public function remove, open bracket, start index as integer, close bracket, as string. Removes all the characters in the current instance, beginning at a specified position and continuing through the last position, and returns the string. Public function remove, open bracket, start index as integer, comma, count as integer, close bracket, as string. Removes the specified number of characters in the current string beginning at a specified position and returns the string. Public function replace, open bracket, old char as char, comma, new char as char, close bracket, as string. Replaces all occurrence of a specified Unicode character in the current string object with the specified Unicode character and returns the new string. Public function replace, open bracket, old value as string, comma, new value as string, close bracket, as string. Replaces all occurrences of a specified string in the current string object with the specified string and returns the new string. Public function split, open bracket, param array separator as char, open close bracket, as string, open close bracket. Return a string array that contains the substrings in the current string object, delimited by elements of a specified Unicode character array. Public function split, open bracket, separator as char, open close brackets, comma, count as integer, close bracket, as string, open close brackets. Returns a string array that contains the substrings in the current string object, delimited by elements of a specified Unicode character array. The int parameter specifies the maximum number of substrings to return. Public function starts with, open bracket, value as string, close bracket, as boolean. Determines whether the beginning of the string instance matches the specified string. Public function to char array as char, open close brackets. Returns a Unicode character array with all the characters in the current string object. Public function to char array, open bracket, start index as integer, comma, length as integer, close bracket, as char, open close brackets. Returns a Unicode character array with all the characters in the current string object, starting from the specified index and up to the specified length. Public function to lower as string. Returns a copy of the string converted to lowercase. Public function to upper as string returns a copy of the string converted to uppercase. Public function trim as string removes all leading and trailing whitespace characters from the current string object. Comparing strings. The following example demonstrates some of the methods mentioned. The example program for comparing strings. When the code is compiled and executed, it produces the following result. String contains string. When the code is compiled and executed, it produces the following result. Getting a substring. When the code is compiled and executed, it produces the following result. Joining strings. When the code is compiled and executed, it produces the following result. Simple application 1. VB.NET program to accept any character from keyboard and display whether it is vowel or not. Click Start, Programs, Microsoft Visual Studio 2008, Microsoft Visual Studio 2008. Select File, New, Project, Windows Application. Place the label, text box and button in the window. Write the code in click event of button result. Run the application by pressing F5 key or by clicking Debug button. Simple application 2. VB.NET program to accept a string and convert the case of the characters. Click Start, Programs, Microsoft Visual Studio 2008, Microsoft Visual Studio 2008. Select File, New, Project, Windows Application. Open the Windows application. Place a label and text as Enter the string. Place two text boxes. One is used to enter the string, the other used to display the result. Then place two buttons. One is used to display the result and the other used to clear the text boxes. Then write the code in click event of button 1 and button 2. Run the application by F5 key or pressing Debug button. Simple application 3. Develop a menu-based VB.NET application to implement a text editor with cut, copy, paste, save, and close operations. Click Start, Programs, Microsoft Visual Studio 2008, Microsoft Visual Studio 2008. Select File, New, Project, Windows Application. Open the Windows application. Place the menu strip in the form from Toolbox. Main menu is constructed with number of submenus named as Open, Close, Save, Cut, Copy, Paste, Undo, Redo, Color, Font, etc. Drag and place a rich text box in the form. Insert the source code for appropriate menu items and finally run the application. Simple application 4. Program to implement the calculator with memory and recall operations. Click Start, Programs, Microsoft Visual Studio 2008, Microsoft Visual Studio 2008. Select File, New, Project, Windows Application. Open the Windows application form. Place 15 buttons and name as 0 to 9 and operators plus, minus, asterisk, slash, equal. Add another 3 buttons named as Memory, Recall, Cancel. Type the code in appropriate events. Run the application by F5 key or pressing Debug button. Simple application 5. Develop a form in VB.NET to pick a date from calendar control and display the day, month, year in separate text boxes. Click Start, Programs, Microsoft Visual Studio 2008, Microsoft Visual Studio 2008. Select File, New, Project, Windows Application. Open the Windows application form. Place a date time picker to select the date. Place 4 label and text boxes named as day, date, month, and year. Edit the following code in form load event and value changed event of date time picker. Run the application by pressing F5 key. Simple Application 6. Develop a VB.NET application to perform timer-based quiz of 10 questions. Click Start, Programs, Microsoft Visual Studio 2008, Microsoft Visual Studio 2008. Select File, New, Project, Windows Application. Open the Windows Application form. Place a text box and named as TXT question. Place a group box and enter as text as answer. Within the group box, place 3 radio buttons. Place a button named as result. Then place the timer and set interval property of timer as 3000. Insert the code in form_load, button result, timer 1_tick and radio button_checked changed event. Run the application by pressing F5 key. Simple Application 7. Develop a VB.NET application using the file and directory controls to implement a common dialog box. Click Start, Programs, Microsoft Visual Studio 2008, Microsoft Visual Studio 2008. Select File, New, Project, Windows Application. Open the Windows Application form. Place Folder Browsing dialog and Open File dialog from the toolbox. Place a group box and enter text as select the option. Within the group box, place 2 radio buttons and enter text as folder open, file open. Place a button named as OK. Place 2 label box and text box from the toolbox. Insert the code in click event of button_OK. Run the application by pressing F5 key. Conclusion. In this chapter, the user would have learned about Introduction to Programming with Visual Basic.NET and the following in detail. Basic concepts and a simple application, using variables, constants, functions, processing decisions, looping structures and lists.